I'm sure you're into UFOs too. It's the site of the Travis Walton
Oh,
abduction.
I didn't know that. Is it really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean somewhere in
Okay.
here.
I'm in a little bit, but not enough to know that piece of trivia. And that is very interesting that it's in the same area as the Mogollon Monster. Thanks for coming back to Bigfoot Society, your weekly cryptozoology focused podcast where I talk to a different individual in the cryptozoology field, authors, researchers, artists, all sorts of people. This week, we've got the privilege of talking to my new friend Josh Moss from PNW Bigfoot Maps. You've probably seen his amazing maps that have to do with Bigfoot on Instagram, Twitter, all sorts of different places. We talk about literally, it's me talking to Josh for an hour about his favorite maps and him telling me why they're his favorite maps. And I don't think he's ever done this on a podcast before. This one, if you're listening on iTunes, you gotta see this on YouTube, because if not, you're gonna be missing a ton. But thanks again for coming back to Bigfoot Society. If you're listening to this on iTunes, please go ahead, subscribe to this podcast and rate us 5 stars, as it helps us get more into the podcast stratosphere and get better guests on the show. Also, if you're on YouTube, do us a favor, like this video and subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost a thing, and it helps us get out there into the YouTube stratosphere as well. Leave in the comments what your map of Josh's is your most favorite, or perhaps what map you would like to see Josh make next. Again, thanks so much for listening to Bigfoot Society, and enjoy this interview with Josh Moss from PNW Bigfoot Maps. It's pretty rockin'. All right, well, thanks for coming back to the Bigfoot Society podcast. I have a new friend here with me tonight, Mr. Josh Moss. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. And listeners might know Josh from his different accounts online under PNW Bigfoot Maps, correct?
Yep, that's me.
That's awesome. He's the guy that makes he takes the data and he takes the Bigfoot and he smushes it into a really fun map to look at and educational. But let's start out, Josh, by kind of sharing a little bit about you that you had sent over to me. So some things we need to know about Josh. He's a geospatial scientist, archaeologist that lives in Portland, Oregon, and a big fan of Bigfoot since he was a kid. He's reflected on the fact that Bigfoot folks are always saying that scientists won't listen to him. So he figured that he could be the scientist that uses his skill set with GIS to make some cool state scale maps. And I mean, they are all over the place. I'm a big fan of them. We'll talk about this later, but his maps offer data such as black bear ranges, precipitation levels. You even have one of my favorites is one where it's the different ranges of I think it's huckleberry, right, in Washington State.
Yep, evergreen huckleberry,
Which is very cool. That's a very cool one. Pretty much his goal is to bring a scientific approach to Bigfoot research. We'll talk about some other things as well. He is thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2007. And it sounds like you get all over the place in nature, the Cascades, the Olympics, which is very, very cool. So, yeah, let's get right into it, Josh.
sounds good.
I always like to get a little bit deeper. You mentioned, you've been into the Bigfoot stuff when you were a kid. Was there a certain thing that kicked that off as when you were a little kid, or how was that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think probably I saw some books about it and stuff, but the thing that really got me hooked, which I think is not like rare, is In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. And
Oh yeah, dude.
based on my age, I saw it in rerun form, but
Hmm.
really just fascinated me. And like every time it came on, I think it was on A&E at the time. Like
Yeah.
I would be trying to catch the reruns, and I liked all the episodes. They covered different subjects, but Bigfoot was always my favorite, and just like had me glued to the TV. And also, I would be, kind of scared.
Yeah.
Uh,
I get it. Yeah.
and so I think that, that kind of fear, like, Bigfoot could be real, could be hiding behind the next tree. I think that's part of the fascination of it, and the way they portrayed it on um, In Search Of just kind of got me hooked. So that's kind of the first like piece of Bigfoot media that really drew me in.
Gotcha. So that's you as a little kid, and my experience is very similar. I was also a big fan of In Search Of, the reruns on A&E, of course, because the originals were a little bit too old for me. But
Yeah,
um,
and that's pretty old.
yeah, exactly. Um, when was it though that you started going out, you started getting a little bit more interested in Bigfoot? What was the next step?
Well, so my interest in it, kind of like waxed and waned,
Hmm.
right? But the I kind of started doing this because I got this job, or I started into this career path of using geographic information systems. It's like sort of scientific mapping, displaying data on maps. And I was like sitting there at work and I was listening to a lot of Bigfoot podcasts while I
Okay.
worked.
Yep.
Because, I kind of my work's kind of, I'm alone and working at a computer most of the time, or at least I was when I started out. And had a lot of time to listen to Bigfoot podcasts. And I was sitting there listening. I was like, you know, when you listen to a lot of Bigfoot podcasts, you'll hear some of the same things over and over again, sort of
Mm.
um, basically ideas or observations or assumptions that people have made about like how Bigfoots behave.
Okay.
And I was thinking to myself, well, I might have the tools at my hand to in a way test some of these
Mm.
observations, like scientifically, like to use a scientific method, which is, you have a hypothesis and you run an experiment, which in my case is a data comparison experiment, and then you can get a result to see, how likely your hypothesis is. And
Mm.
so I was sort of collecting hypotheses, which I don't know if that's how you say that,
Right.
um, from Bigfoot podcasts. Like an example of that, like if what I'm saying doesn't make sense, an example of that is like Bigfoots stick to the waterways.
Yeah. Sticks
That's
to the
like
sticks to the
that's
creek.
something
Yeah.
you hear that repeated,
Oh, yeah.
and I was like, well, I definitely have information, I have access to information about waterways, right?
Mm.
So if I was to be able to get access to data about Bigfoot reports, I could, statistically try to test that.
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
So it would be like an actual scientific experiment if I was to compare those two data points. So you got your Bigfoot reports, and I could use, wetland data from the National Wetland Inventory, which is like
Oh,
an
wow.
official
Yeah.
inventory from the government of where all the waterways and wetlands are in
Right.
America.
Yeah.
I could compare the two and see what percentage of Bigfoot reports are in a close proximity to these waterways. And if it's a high
Yeah.
percentage, then that observation from, Bigfoot field researchers, or that sort of statement about Bigfoot's behavior, is sort of backed up by actual data.
That to me is fascinating. There has there been any just like mind-blowing realizations that you've come across from making these maps? Like you see the everything like the dots line up or anything that's just blown you away or
Well, that's kind of why I use the waterways example, because I've made a bunch of them, and there's so many examples of that, like things people say about Bigfoot behavior. You know, um, Obviously they avoid people,
Mhm.
or you know, I'm trying to think of some others right now. What are some other things like that that people kind of repeat about Bigfoot behavior?
Yeah. Mm, I gotcha. I am
People will say like, oh, they might, utilize. people's crop fields as food sources, or people
Oh,
might
right, right.
say
Exactly.
that
Yep.
they hunt deer, for instance. So those
Or
are some others I've
salmon
checked
or
out,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
But the reason I mentioned the waterways one first is because I think it's the one that's come out with the best, strongest correlation.
Okay.
And so if you want to try this screen sharing thing,
Yeah, let's try it out live in I
see if
did
it
this last
works.
time with, another guest, and, it's always fun. Technology is the best to see if it works, but we're gonna give you good vibes for sure.
Are we seeing it?
Oh, actually, hold on. Let me yeah, it's see if I can bring it up on ooh. Okay, I'm gonna add to oh,
There we go.
yes.
There we go.
Guys, you need to be on, YouTube. You should always be on YouTube, guys, if you know, but this is gonna be awesome. Alright, Josh, what are we looking at here? This is cool.
So this is um, Bigfoot sightings in southeast Texas, which
Okay.
that's sort of the Sam Houston National Forest, the like the big thicket, which
Oh, yeah.
and I want to explain why I chose this area
Yes, please.
for this particular like analysis, and that's because this is the area of the legend of Boggy Creek. You know,
Oh, yeah, 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 definitely.
the Boggy Creek.
The classic movie.
It would have been just over here, just a little bit more east, right?
Okay, gotcha.
And that's one of the sources, I think, of the idea that Bigfoots stick to the waterways is that story, the stories
Oh,
from the
totally,
legend
yeah,
of Boggy Creek.
yeah.
And so that's why I chose this area. And as you can see, I displayed all the Bigfoot reports
Okay.
that I have in my database. And I don't know how well this is going to show up to people on YouTube, but red ones are within, red ones are farther than a quarter of a mile from a wetland.
Oh, interesting.
And blue ones are within a quarter of a mile of a
Okay,
wetland.
okay.
Now, and that's a very small tolerance. Like you think an animal the size of a Bigfoot has a pretty big range. So I went tight with this, like just a quarter of a mile from a wetland to
Wow.
run the numbers. And now, if you don't mind me leaving the map for a second,
Go for it.
oops,
Whatever
that's a
you'd like
different
to
map.
do.
Um, I have the numbers here. So of the 80 sightings
Okay.
in southeast Texas, 64 occurred within a quarter mile of a wetland.
Whoa.
80%. So that
Yeah.
I like to show this map because it's the best percentage I've like gotten doing this.
You proved that they're sticking to the near the waterways. That's crazy, man.
There's a couple caveats to that because
Okay.
and I feel like as a scientist, I kind of have to mention stuff like this.
I gotcha.
Um, these are reports, so
Mhm.
they aren't, a tagged Bigfoot.
Exactly.
So in that sense, it's not proof of anything, but it is a correlation that if say every one of these reports was true, like an actual Bigfoot report, then it definitely would prove that they favor wetlands and waterways as their habitats.
Mm. Wow, fascinating. That is absolutely fascinating.
So yeah, so that's like kind of I like to show this one a lot because it just has that kind of eye popping 80% correlation. And
Yeah.
I like it because it's kind of a tribute to Boggy Creek, which is like such a great movie and classic Bigfoot thing.
I mean, everyone knows Boggy Creek for sure.
Yeah.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that one. That was awesome. Do you have any other ones that you would be able to share or
Yeah. So I wanted to share one that I definitely haven't I made since I've been on any other podcast, I think. So I
okay.
wanted to share this one.
Nice.
And now this is a map of
Ooh.
the Mogollon Rim
Yeah.
in Arizona.
Oh, cool, dude. I love this.
And I really like this one just because I ended up liking just the way this one looks. And the Mogollon Rim, I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a really, really beautiful place, really
Mm.
cool area. You know, pinyon and juniper forest, and
Okay.
I'm s- I'm blanking on the name of the pine trees. Ponderosa pine
Ah,
trees.
yeah, you got it. Yep.
Yeah,
You
and
got it.
just a beautiful place. And I'm sure you're into UFOs too. It's the site of the Travis Walton
Oh,
abduction.
I didn't know that. Is it really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean somewhere in
Okay.
here.
I'm in a little bit, but not enough to know that piece of trivia. And that is very interesting that it's in the same area as the Mogollon Monster.
Yes, very much so.
Wow.
So
Oh
somewhere in here, right,
man. Yeah,
is
right.
where that took place.
Okay.
But I like this one because this one, um, I did some statistics with this one to kind of show like what it means to have like a concentration
Hmm.
based on numbers. So if I can explain that,
Okay.
I'll close the map for a second.
Sure.
So there's 102 total reports in my database in the state of Arizona.
Okay.
39 of them occur on the Mogollon Rim,
Hmm.
38%,
Wow.
and 63 of them occur elsewhere,
Okay.
61%. So it's like 60-40,
Mm-hmm.
40% on the rim. But the total area of Arizona is roughly 115,000 square miles.
Okay.
The area of the Mogollon Rim is only 7,000 square miles,
Oh
6%
wow.
of the state. So what I'm saying is within 6% of the state,
Yeah,
40% of the reports.
that's crazy.
So that's what it means to have a hot spot, mathematically speaking.
Sure. Oh man, wild. That is so wild.
So that's why I kind of like this one, and just because it's a cool area. I did some archaeology up here when I was in college, and it was fun.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I haven't been there, but like, I don't know if you've seen the series that came out, Chasing Legends, where they actually went to the Mogollon Rim to look for the Mogollon Monster, and it looks like a just a beautiful area. You know,
It is.
wow, that is cool. So, did you say you have your own database for Bigfoot reports, or where are you getting your information from usually?
Oh, you know what? I'll share a screen on that too because it is
Okay,
not
cool.
it is not my database.
Okay,
I want to give credit where credit's due, right? Because I did not make the database, and that's a lot of work.
it is a lot of work to do stuff like that. Yeah,
So
I would
it's
imagine.
cool that. Oh, I'm sorry, I stepped on you there a little bit.
Oh, you're good.
It's cool that we can share screens because I feel
Mm,
like I can really go through this.
okay.
So this is the
Interesting.
database, Mangani's Bigfoot Maps,
Okay.
and I want to give a little more credit. Um, I wouldn't have found this. Cliff Barachman told me
Mm,
about this website,
okay, cool.
and I have to say, I just really appreciate that he even gave me the time of day because he's kind of celebrity in this world, if not even just a celebrity in general.
He's got a lot going on for sure.
And he answered my email and was like, "Here's a database you could use to try to do that." And he even gave me a couple ideas, like I was talking about before, like the
Nice.
behavior ideas to test. So I just really appreciated that him doing that. So yeah, this website is where I got my points, and you can see they have them all through North America,
Oh
basically.
wow, yeah, yeah.
And I like to explain this that these points are sourced from all these different organizations. So I'm not going to go through and name them all, but obviously the BFRO is
Right.
a big contributor. But you've got the Texas Bigfoot Research Conservancy, you got the
Oh, cool.
Virginia
Yeah.
Bigfoot Research Organization, and more. I think it's 14 different organizations that
Wow.
contributed points. One lacking thing with this database is it does have um, dates on a lot of them, which is cool. But that allowed me to find out that it stops at 2016.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
when I'm doing these things, there's probably a lot of sightings in the past that would be 6 years
Oh yeah.
that could change the outcomes of some of these analyses. And then there's another chance for me to shout someone out is Bigfoot Mapping Project, which
Yes.
is him. So I think on Instagram it's just at Bigfoot Mapping Project.
He's on next week.
Oh, cool,
I'm literally
cool.
interviewing him next week, so I'm excited to talk to both of you guys one after the other.
He kind of harnesses a different aspect of GIS
Yep.
than I do.
Okay. Okay.
Although he's done some analysis stuff like I do, he has done something I don't do at all with this, which is he's um, harnessed sort of the crowdsourcing
Yes,
and
definitely.
online um, interactive aspects of GIS
Mm.
to allow people to submit their reports as like map points
Okay. Yep.
through an app that he made, uh, you know, that I think you can download on your phone. I mean, he'll tell you about it. Anyway, I always like to mention him because he's like the other person I see in the Bigfoot world, like really using this technology, and he does a thing that I haven't even done with this. I actually do that kind of stuff at work, but I haven't done it with the Bigfoot stuff.
Okay. Yeah. The I have that app on my phone. It's very fun. To see there's some very interesting user submitted reports. So everyone, I think it's a few bucks, but it's if you're into Bigfoot stuff, it is definitely worth going without coffee for a day. Like
You
it is
know,
so much worth it.
I agree. I always like to. I don't like to be. I feel like some Bigfooters are like territorial, and I like to be the opposite. I always like to just shout out anybody who's
Totally.
doing something cool or anything like that. I like to spread the word.
So have I'm curious about your maps. Have people started to use them in certain ways, or is it a thing where you make them available for people to use and like on their websites, or has there been any like collaboration with that's come out of this?
There has so a number of them, if not all of them, now are on the Forest Floor website,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
and she used to have those like Patreon only, but
Hmm.
I think she's opened it up.
Yeah, she has. Yep.
So a number of my maps, if not all of them, I want to say I gave her like all the files. Um, are there in the full high res versions? Because
Oh,
I only post them on Twitter and Instagram, and obviously they're crunched. Because I usually export like 5,000 by 8,000
wow.
pixel images, and so that's like what you could see on the Forest Floor website if you want to
Okay.
check those out.
Okay.
And yeah, they're available. Like people have asked me for different copies or um, different information, and I always try to help out. So I think the answer to that's yes.
Nice, nice. So what I'm getting is if you want to uh get Josh's play by play on the maps, you probably want to follow him on Twitter. If you want to see the full layout high res, then you need to check out Emily's website, Forest Floor, which you should definitely be there anyways because it's pretty awesome. She does a great job. Have you I would man, it would be cool if someday you could collaborate with North American Bigfoot Center. That would be rocking.
Yeah, I'd love to. I did. I
Yeah.
gave. So I went there. Like I think the picture you used on my.
Mhm.
Well, but that was before they opened. I thought maybe they'd be open and they weren't open yet that day.
Oh,
So
okay.
I just took a
Gotcha.
picture. But
Yep, yep.
I went later, and Connor, one of the employees there,
Yeah.
showed me around, and I gave him all of the maps on a thumb drive.
Oh, cool.
So I'm basically the maps are. I'm not anything I'm keeping back from anybody. You know,
Nice, nice.
and I guess when you, I'm sorry, I don't mean I don't want to be like rolling on too
Oh, no,
much. Okay.
go right ahead. If it gets if it gets to a point, I'll reel back in, but I'd say let's go for it, man.
Well, I was gonna say because you mentioned collaboration, and there's
Yeah.
another fella out there working in the Bigfoot world, like with hard data, I would say, and that's and I bet you're gonna know this fella too, Squatcher Metrics,
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. That's a good
Wes.
guy. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and so he and I collaborated a couple times. Actually, I want to say that Evergreen. Huckleberry map you
Okay.
mentioned, so the sightings on that are not from this database. They're from Wes's database.
Interesting. Okay.
So that was a collaboration with him. But this was a collaboration with him, and it's the bear maps. So where I
Mm,
compared um, Bigfoot reports to bear range in the state of Colorado, which is, I think, a great Bigfoot state. And I haven't visited Colorado enough. I'd like to spend more time there. So the first one is just, and remember, these are Wes's Bigfoot points, not the ones from that
okay.
website I just showed.
Gotcha.
So all credit to him. He's a great sort of data scientist and Bigfoot researcher. Um, all the red ones here are within black bear range, and the
Mm,
two yellow ones are out, right? And I've always loved this one because that's a huge correlation.
mm-hmm.
That's close to 100%.
Yeah.
And I feel like this says something very interesting. People sometimes think, well, like data can only say one thing, right? Like if you've got numbers, you've got a conclusion, and it's not open to interpretation. But that's just not true. And this map is like a really good example of that, because if you're prone to Bigfoot skepticism, you look at this and you say, "Oh, well, this proves my point. All Bigfoot reports are just people seeing bears."
Right.
But if you're prone to belief in Bigfoot,
Mm-hmm.
you look at this and say, "Well, this proves my point. This makes a lot of sense, because if, Bigfoots would have very similar feeding patterns and behavior patterns to black bears,
Right. Right. If
and they would necessarily be accessing the same food resources.
exactly. Yeah, that's the exact thought I had. Yeah. If there's food source for one, there's food source for the other. That's genius.
They would have you would think that if a Bigfoot like animal was able to survive, it would have to avail itself of an omnivorous
Mm-hmm.
diet, much like a black bear. So what I'm saying here, though, is this map is like a Rorschach test.
Oh, yeah, dude. Totally. It
It's
is.
it's pure data.
Yep.
It's a pure comparison of two sets of data, but what it means is all about what preconceptions you bring to it.
I love that. That is, oh man, that's good, dude. Yeah.
So
Oh,
that's kind of why I love to show this one, and I love bears too. They're like, oh yeah, I mean, that's not rare. Everybody thinks bears are cute, but um, I'm a fan of them, so I did like to do the comparison. And yeah, I thought that was cool. But so I did some other seasonal things though.
okay.
So I got summer Bigfoot sightings
Oh.
and summer bear concentrations. And as you can
Mm.
see, it's like a little bit of a different story. There's more Bigfoots that are avoiding the same spots as bears
Oh,
during the
interesting.
summer.
Yeah.
But there's so many ways to interpret why that could be, right? Why this looks this way. Because every one of these points represents a person, right? Because it's a report, so a person and a Bigfoot had to meet. I took that from
That's a good point. That is
I
a
took
great
that from
point. Yeah.
Cliff, by the way. I heard him say that, like
That's
on
yeah.
some
All
on
right.
some show. He said, for a report to happen, a Bigfoot and a person have to meet.
Yeah.
And so you think summer, everyone's out here. Bears are avoiding where people are.
Mm. Yep.
So,
Yep.
you know, that's one explanation. And so I love the bear maps because they just kind of reinforce to me the concept that even quote unquote hard numbers, hard data can mean different things to two different people.
Exactly.
And fall's kind of the same as summer. The
Hmm.
correlation kind of goes away. And oh, this is within the human conflict zones. So this one isn't
What's that
seasonal.
mean?
So human conflict zones are something that like the Forest Service or whatever agency. I believe this is data from the Forest Service.
Okay.
Um, mapped areas where humans and bears run into each other
Oh, okay.
often.
Gotcha.
So that's interesting. So in essence, it's places where people report seeing bears a lot.
Ah, makes sense. Yep.
And you'll notice that, you know, so if you it's this one's kind of cool because if you took away every red point
Mm-hmm.
and said that's a bear
Okay.
because it's in a place where people often see bears, right? You'd still have a lot of yellow points.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's cool too. I thought this whole it's a 4 map set and because there was 4 different types of bear information. So I thought that was a pretty cool one.
That is really cool. That's very smart to do the different seasons for sure. I love that. Make a cool poster. Have you ever thought of making these into posters?
You know, yeah, I mean, I kind of have like you could
Okay.
definitely there was somebody who approached me about it and I was like, you know, I'll send you a high res file and you can because I didn't really have like any kind of thing set up for that.
Right.
So one person asked me about it and I was like, I'll just send you a high res file and you can either have a website printed out or
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
have a nice printer, I don't really have a nice printer. Um and I hadn't like made I'm sure there's some website I could go to like that would produce posters of any image, right?
Oh, there's got to be. Yeah.
I
Okay.
haven't looked into it, but
Right. Gotcha.
there, it's something like if a bunch of people had asked, I would have looked into it, but really
Right.
only there's one time I can remember somebody asking about that.
Have you ever made maps that apply to different cryptids besides Bigfoot?
Yeah,
You have.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
I've done alien or I've done UFO
Oh,
ones.
cool. Have you done the Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, yeah.
You have. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
and
Yeah.
if you will bear with me, I can
I'll bear
scroll
with
to
you.
it.
I'll
All
bear
right.
with you. Yep. Because
Um,
that would be wild.
okay, so and of course, another shout out, small town monsters.
Oh, for sure.
This
They're
map,
the
if I can
best.
find it,
The
right,
best.
it was very much inspired by those guys
Okay.
because their movie about the Chestnut Ridge really leaned on the idea of Bigfoots and UFOs together.
Exactly.
Seems like that's kind of a Chestnut Ridge theme.
Mhm.
So here, I will. It's. I'll find this. I swear.
Alright.
I
No
just got to
sweat.
go through
No
the
sweat.
Twitter feed here.
Because I think it would be very cool to see a map representation of Bigfoot sightings in correlation to UFO sightings, especially in that area.
So because I have two favorite DIY paranormal movie making crews, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sure you can probably guess.
I'm guessing STM is
Small
probably
Town Monsters and then,
yep.
Hellier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Newkirks. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yep.
I made Bigfoot maps or I made Bigfoot and alien comparison maps of Pennsylvania and Kentucky.
Oh, that is cool.
One for each.
That is
Okay, so here's the
okay, yeah,
Kentucky
yeah.
one,
Nice.
but I want to find the Pennsylvania. Okay, here it is.
Oh, well, okay. Here we go. Oh, wow. Yeah, that was totally worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool because so here in South, weirdly they're kind of like centered around Pittsburgh, but
Yeah.
if I think the well, the UFO sightings aren't as
Mhm.
nature specific as Bigfoot sightings, right?
Right.
So the UFO sightings are the little targets.
Okay.
Bigfoot sightings are the little dots. And ones that were within a mile of each other, or Bigfoot sightings that were within a mile of a UFO sighting are the big green dots.
Interest oh, even up in the Northeast, there's one.
Yeah.
Interesting. Down by Harrisburg too, in the Amish area?
But you can see that I think this is Chestnut Ridge right here.
Yeah, down in that area. I'm pretty sure that's what we're looking at is yep,
You can
definitely.
see how dense the Bigfoot sightings are kind
Yeah.
of in this area. And then you can see you got a couple UFO and Bigfoot sightings together along this
Wow,
western edge of the Appalachians there.
that's wild. Oh, that is cool. I love how you thought to do that. Oh, that is really cool.
Well, inspired by these cool documentaries.
Mm.
I'll
True,
put up
true.
the Kentucky one.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Totally. Okay, so we got Bigfoot sightings within 1 mile of UFO sighting, and that's the yellow dots?
Yeah, and the UFOs are the white targets. You know what? You know what I didn't do on this map, and this is like kind of a map maker's foul,
Mhm.
is I didn't put any location, like I didn't put any roads or towns, except I put a star for Somerset because this map was inspired by Hellier.
Right. That's funny.
So I don't know, like I don't know off the top of my head what's right here where there's kind of a
Yeah.
where there's two of these right together. There's two of them right together here.
Hmm.
Oh, and here's Hellier.
Oh, okay.
And look, there's
Gotcha.
one of them right next to Hellier.
Oh, that's wild. Oh, you
It's
got I wonder if, the Newkirks have seen this map. That would be so cool.
I believe that I think that one of them might have retweeted it or something because
Yeah,
it has
that's
a
stalking.
34 likes, which is a lot for my account.
Nice, nice. Um, question for you. So, the I'm guessing it's some kind of software you're using to make this. Is this like, is this stuff that, someone off the street could start using themselves, or is this a pretty high-end thing you're using, or
Well, the kind of yes and no. There is
Okay.
open source software that does this, you
Okay,
know?
cool.
Yeah. So you could. The learning curve's kind of high.
Okay.
It's not real obvious how to use the software. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
I gotcha.
Um, do you use like a DAW, digital audio workstation, to like mix your
Um, like,
podcasts?
yeah, yes, yep, yep.
So I would say it's, you know, because I know how to use those too.
Mhm.
I would say like I think about them in comparison a lot because
Okay.
really all it is like arranging data so that it all comes together and exports in a certain way. J-
Makes sense.
So if you think about it on a zoomed out level, it's the same idea. But I would say that the GIS software is, a bit more complicated to use than like Logic or something like that.
Oh, wow, yeah, 'cause logic can get a little wild by itself, so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty complicated
okay.
software. You know, I not to boast or whatever, but I do have like a master's degree in just that.
If you have that, that should be a thing that you like, that's not boasting, that had to be hard to get that, so congrats for you, man, that's very cool.
Thanks. I don't like to. I only mention it because just by way of like trying to explain how deep you can go with it.
I gotcha. Um, so going back to the open source thing for let's say if there's someone listening to this and they're like, "I'd still kinda wanna mess around with it." Are there any that you could recommend that they look into
So
or
I 100% encourage that, right?
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And like with this website here, let me. I was gonna. So with this website,
Okay.
now some of this stuff you can do just with Google Earth. So
Oh, sure.
Google Earth is kind of can be a starting point. You can mess around,
Okay.
but if you want to go deep, I'll bring it right up. I love that we're
Man.
sharing screens.
Yeah, is this the thing you, so I usually don't listen to, I listen to interviews after I interview the guest, if that makes sense. I don't like listening to a lot of interviews that my future guests have been on already because I don't know if that makes sense. It's just a weird interview thing I do. I like to have the first impression face to face, right?
Totally.
Do you do this on a lot of other podcasts where you're like screen sharing and stuff or?
I've screen shared on one of them, I think, but it did
Okay.
not go this smoothly.
Oh, cool. Well, rock
So
on.
this
This is
is
great.
this is cool.
Cool, cool. Okay, QGIS.
Yep. So it's just qgis.org. and download now. This is open source software.
Oh, nice.
And with this and this, you could pretty
Mhm.
much do what you could replicate what I've done, which
Wow.
I I like that because that's a key part of the scientific method is that if you do an experiment, it can be done in the exact same way and produce the exact same result.
Yeah, dude, totally. That has to happen. Like, you have to be able to reproduce it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Every one of these things I've done with this
Mhm.
and the know-how, you could do
Yeah.
that.
So I'm gonna have this episode's gonna have plenty of links for resources. This is gonna be awesome. Do you think is there like an equivalent of how you said there's different Bigfoot databases? Do you think there's one for like could you do this with dogman sightings? That would be interesting. I don't know if there's a database like that out there, but
I don't I don't know. You definitely could. I would
yeah,
definitely be I would love to actually make a Dogman versus Bigfoot map because to be honest with you, I haven't made a map in a while because I kind of ran out of ideas. And
that's it.
Dogman compared with Bigfoot would be so cool.
That would be real. Oh man, like see if they have if they're in the same territory or maybe they have different territories. Like you could see so much with that. I think.
Yeah, I think it would be like the UFO ones, but better somehow.
Yeah, oh yeah. Hey, have you done a thing where I'm sure you could use maps at different times of the year to like maybe prove if there's migration involved with Bigfoot?
Yeah, yep, definitely have done that.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I don't know how conclusive it was, but I'd love to show it.
Yeah, let's do
If
it. That
you
would be
can
amazing
bear with my scrolling for a
for
minute.
sure.
Well, so I did. Oh, here it is.
Yep.
All right, so I'll show you the version with the huckleberry. So here it
Okay.
is in fall, right?
Nice. We're looking at the
And
Olympic Peninsula, looks like.
my legend, uh, another map maker's foul. My legend did not print out correctly, so you
Oh,
can see it
yeah.
doesn't have the symbols in it.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
which that aggravates me because I'm a
Well,
bit of a perfectionist.
you live and learn, right?
But the yellows are within 1 mile of a huckleberry area or in it,
Oh, interesting.
and the blues are out of it, farther than a mile.
Okay.
And so it's 20. So in fall, it's 20 within, 38 out of huckleberry.
Hmm.
So then you can go to spring.
Okay.
In spring, it's 10 in,
Huh.
32 out.
Wow.
But let's see. And so that's, say Bigfoot are moving, they're moving away from the huckleberry in spring.
Mm. Mhm.
Summer, we got 26 in, 38 out.
Wow.
So in summer, they might be using it like a little bit more, going towards it a little bit more. But also, there's just more sightings in summer, so this might not be meaningful. We might be looking at a pretty steady general rate of huckleberry proximity.
Okay. That's awesome.
And then in winter, we've got 14 in, 25 out. So
Wow.
that's that one. And, I don't know what that says about migration, but talking to different researchers, about migration. So I bring my archaeological background into this a
Yeah.
bit.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Go for it.
There's something that archaeologists think that, and it's pretty well established that, you know, groups of people that are on the level, sort of societal level of organization of hunter gatherer, they do something called the seasonal round. So they don't migrate from point A to point B. Progresses each year. They move with they follow the food source they're going to use in different seasons.
Makes sense. Yep.
And I think that based on what we know about apes that we know for a fact are real
Mhm.
and what we know about, the food sources in the sort of more wild, um, remote parts of America that are kind of remote enough that something like this would potentially be there, that a seasonal round behavior might make sense if these creatures
Mm,
were real. And you could kind of make an analogy with people that were, from the distant past,
gotcha.
that were, prior to agriculture, and how they moved about the landscape in the rhythm of the seasons to access seasonal food sources.
Yeah, that definitely makes more sense than they're just traveling from point A to point B. Yep.
I think so, because we don't see. I mean, we do see mammals that do that. I believe, like
Mhm.
whales. I think like make these huge, but those are ocean-born mammals. So I'm not a biologist, but I feel like it's a and birds do this kind of point A to point B thing. But you more hear about large mammals having a territory, from my knowledge. Again, I don't like to speak on biological topics like I'm some kind of expert, because that's not my I feel like I'd be talking out of my what.
Right. But there is a point from all of this that I really, before I forget it, it just came into my mind real quick. And that is what Josh did is really cool because instead of him just listening to content and he's thinking outside the box saying, hey, I've got these skills. I can use my skills to make the community even better. And to that, I say hats off to you. But let's say I'm talking to a listener right now. If you're a listener out there and you've got some amazing set of skills that you think can make the Bigfoot community rocking and get like info that we're not seeing, contact me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and like let me know because I would love to talk to you. And maybe you'll be the new, Josh with PNW Bigfoot Maps, but you'll be doing something completely different. I want to hear about it. So that's just like my little plug there. But what do we got here, Josh?
Oh, so this is the general migration map without.
Okay.
It's
Wow.
much more of the state of Washington,
Okay.
and it's my database, not Squatchometrics Wes's. But
Gotcha.
now this suffers from the fact that a lot of the points are unknown what
Mm.
season they were in. So all
Ah,
the red points, right? As I move through the series, the red points are going to stay in the same place because we don't know what season they were in. Just wasn't recorded with the sighting, I
gotcha.
guess,
Gotcha.
or it didn't make its way to the database. But I think there was some interesting. Just if I scroll through these visually, I think there's some interesting trends. So
All
this
right.
is fall,
Okay.
and in fall, and what I think is interesting to look at is the coast here
Sure.
and some of the high elevations, right?
Yeah.
So in fall, you got a couple high elevations here, which I believe this is Mount St. Helens,
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
and which, classic Bigfoot place,
Oh, yeah. You got
Eight
some
Canyon.
crazy stories from down there. No doubt. No doubt.
So here we have
Oh,
spring, and
yeah.
notice that some of these mountaintops in spring
Uh-huh.
are kind of abandoned and less on the coast in spring than in fall.
Hmm.
Summer, notice the density up high. This is the interesting thing to me. High elevation areas in summer have a lot more sightings. And that speaks to, well, it could, so this is that whole, it could be one thing or the other thing, because it could just be there's more people
True.
up on the mountains in
Yep.
summer. But then
Yep.
again, well, especially Mount St. Helens, because it's not really a ski mountain. Or is it? No. It's not like a ski resort mountain, right?
I'm going to defer that to you because I'm
I
from
should know
Central
because I
Iowa.
go up there all the time, but I'm not a skier,
Yeah,
so I
I
don't pay
yeah,
attention to where the ski resorts are.
gotcha, gotcha.
Anyway, it's
Yeah.
not like Mount Hood, you know.
Okay. Yeah, Mount Hood, big time ski area. Yeah,
Anyway, so it could just be, oh, there's a lot more people up here, but it could be that
sure.
during the summer the Bigfoots go up here to harvest some type of food that's up high, like berries that are blooming up high. And
Mm.
then you go to winter
Oh, yeah.
and look at the high elevations are
Wow.
very sparse.
Yep.
So I thought the migration maps were pretty cool for some of those sort of visually. Now I didn't run any numbers on that like statistics because you know it was I would have had to been like, okay, here's a space around Mount St. Helens and how many miles is that and how many are within and without. I didn't go to that whole uh distance on this one, but I think if you just scroll through them visually, like if you viewers, right, keep your eye on Mount St. Helens.
Right.
Winter,
Yeah.
summer, like
Mm.
I think you can
Mhm.
really see and like look up here too in the North Cascades,
Crazy.
how much sparser that gets in winter versus summer. And
Wow.
again, it could just be explained by the fact that fewer people go out here in winter.
Mhm.
But, you know, I would like, Washingtonians and Oregonians are all season outdoors people too, you know? These are popular places in the winter as well.
Man, I feel like if you were a Bigfoot researcher in Washington, that these maps would be super helpful to you and probably would, just I mean, I would be making all sorts of changes in my research base. Like, this is some wild stuff. What?
A lot of people, tons of people kept asking me about something like this. And then
Really?
I was like, I
You
better
better do
try to do it because actually a fairly there's other ways to approach it, like how to show potential migration, and this is just the way I came up with basically because I don't have more spare time to go
Gotcha.
mm, try to do it a better way.
Oh, man. There should be a, speaking of other cryptids, it would be cool if there was a map of, like, the Lake Michigan Mothman, the Chicago Mothman sightings that are all around, like, Illinois and Wisconsin and stuff. That'd be wild, but Bigfoot Maps is probably kind of a full-time job, I'm thinking. You're doing some great work in this. This is awesome.
Well, the thing about like so that brings up an interesting point to me is that most of my
Okay.
maps are on the state scale,
Right.
and so a map of Mothman sightings would be on the scale of like a city.
True, you could focus in on Chicago.
Because if
That
you
would
did
definitely be
the
one.
whole country, you'd have some in Chicago, some in West
Yep,
Virginia,
yep.
and did you say there was another one?
Well, the Lake Michigan Mothman, the Chicago that would be around, like, the Chicago area. Yeah,
So to get a good, you know, analysis, you'd want to focus on Chicago with that.
right. Yep.
So I've made very few maps at that small of a scale, but I did
Okay,
make
gotcha.
one of Portland,
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, that is Portland. Nice.
or Portland's like over here because this is, and I thought this one was pretty cool. And what I did with this one is I was trying to assess if there's enough um, of the right kind of cover
Mm,
for a Bigfoot to potentially travel. Like this is something that if I was doing this like with a biologist, it's called least cost path analysis, and
okay.
um, do it to make sure that different animals have continuous habitat. So like for animals to survive, you can't have their habitats be little islands, right? They need hab- habitable land
Right.
between so that they can have different areas. So that's basically what I did here. Is because like so here you're starting to get to the Cascades, right?
Okay.
So I took out a bunch of land cover classes and I left barren land, deciduous forest, wetlands, evergreen forest, herbaceous, which is like grasslands,
Mm-hmm.
mixed forests, shrub, scrub, and woody wetlands. So I left all those in, and I wanted to see, how hard would it be for Bigfoot to stay within one of those land classes, trying to get all the way to the middle of
Oh, wow.
Bournemouth.
Yeah. Right.
You
Yep. I get it.
And it'd be a challenge,
Yeah. That would be, it'd get interesting at points. How
but
does
you've
it
got a
work?
couple sightings. Like here, you've got a sighting just west of the interstate,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then you've got a sighting here past the interstate.
Dang.
Another one somehow right on the interstate. That one's probably questionable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I don't know. I mean, it's crazy that Bigfoot is there's so many Bigfoot out there. Like people, Cliff was just talking on his podcast about how like people see like sightings like right off the highway. But yeah, it kind of blows my mind too. Like, living in Iowa. But
His shop is somewhere right around. Oh, right here.
okay, so that's where boring is.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
You might not be able to see it on the screen share, but it does
Okay.
say boring right here.
Okay, yeah, yeah, gotcha.
There's a big concentration right down here, right?
Yeah,
So
there
if
is.
there was, Bigfoot's hanging out just east of the city,
Mm,
this map at kind of a city scale is about, well, do they have the what I guess to be the proper type of land to make it closer to human populations? And I
wow.
think in a lot of ways they do.
Yeah, I mean, it
There's a
seems
couple
like it's
paths here.
doable. Yeah. Man, that is crazy. Josh, this has been like I'll be honest, I had something planned for this episode and it turned into something way cooler than I ever could have hoped for. So like this is this has this is probably one of my favorite episodes, to be honest.
Oh, really? Well,
Just being
thank you.
just
I'm
being able to
blushing
like
over here.
look over someone's shoulder who really knows what they're doing and their craft with Bigfoot and maps, and like it's very cool. So I appreciate you coming on and hanging out. It's crazy to think we're already at the end of the hour and it feels like we just started.
It really did go by fast.
It went by fast, but like I think people can get a lot of info from it. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, you need to go over to the YouTube page because keep in mind, the entire hour pretty much is there's stuff on the screen. Josh is pointing to stuff on maps. You need to look at it on YouTube. But Josh, how can people best keep up to date with what you're doing with the maps and all that good stuff?
YouTube or Instagram is kind of where my presence is, and it's at PNW Bigfoot Maps on both.
Awesome.
I unfortunately I haven't been super active lately. I've just been like really busy with other things. So I'm really glad you had me on, and I'm sorry if I over steamrolled your
No,
concept for the episode.
I wasn't gutsy enough to ask you to do it, so I'm glad it happened out like this.
Well, can I ask what it was?
uh what was?
Your original concept for the episode.
Oh, I had some questions planned, but it was uh pretty much my main focus was going to be getting you to show some of the maps, and this is better than what I could have hoped for. So thank
Oh
you.
well, I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear it, and I just appreciate when anyone will like listen to me ramble.
Oh yeah.
So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's been a
It's
good
really
time,
fun.
Josh, for sure. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for listening to the Bigfoot Society podcast. Please take a few minutes to review the show on iTunes, 5 stars, as it does help us get into the eyes and ears of more listeners on iTunes. That will help us just get bigger and bigger and get even better quality guests for future shows. Also, if you have any Bigfoot encounters or cryptid encounters, please send your stories and audio and photos, whatever you've got, over to bigfootsociety@gmail.com. If you'd like to become more involved with Bigfoot Society and get some extra content, we do have a Patreon where you can get all sorts of cool things. For example, for $7 a month, You get extra Bigfoot Society content, usually interviews, but other things as well. You get a sweet membership card and a vinyl sticker that I send to you in the mail. You get access to the Bigfoot Society after show, which is an extra interview after the main interview with the weekly guest, and usually they are up for Patreon members to be in that extra show segment with them and me, and you get to ask your question live to them and get an answer from the guest, which, as you've seen what guest we've had in the past, this could be a really big deal. There's also a private Discord where you can get involved with talking to me one-on-one and the community there, and that's always a great time. You can find the Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. We're very thankful for all our supporters that we have in so many different ways, and appreciate all our listeners coming back week after week to listen to more cryptozoology-based interviews. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. The views and opinions expressed are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Bigfoot Society. Any content provided by our guests are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone. Thank you.